My wife cheated with her boss, Rick, during our lake house renovation. Then I found out she was secretly draining our account to give him $150, $0 for a startup, and now she's suing me for half the property, claiming I manipulated her. All while I just discovered she's been secretly planning to leave me with nothing. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, I thought I knew my wife, Lisa, pretty well. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I never suspected she'd go as far as she did. The thing is, it all started subtly, small signs that I brushed off at first. She'd be more distant, secretive even. Her phone would buzz constantly, and she'd hide it quickly when I entered the room. She'd snap at me for no reason, accuse me of being paranoid when I asked about her late nights or why she seemed so anxious. But I just chalked it up to stress, work, or maybe her period, whatever rational excuse I could come up with. Then came the renovations at the lake house. It was supposed to be a relaxing retreat, a place where we could escape the city and enjoy some peace. We've been planning this for months, saving up, talking about how great it'd be to finally have that weekend getaway. But as the work progressed, I started noticing weird things. Small discrepancies in the budget, for example. I'd check our bank statements, and suddenly there was a lot of money missing, more than what I'd authorized. I thought maybe I was just imagining things, or maybe it was just the contractors messing up the bills. But then I saw the emails. Lisa had been talking to her boss, Rick, more than just about the renovation. Their emails were full of flirtatious comments, inside jokes, and plans that clearly crossed the line. She told him she was stressed, but the way she wrote about him, it was obvious it was more than just work. I found a string of messages where she called him sexy and said she couldn't wait to see him again. I was stunned. How could she do this? I mean, she always acted like she loved me, like I was her world. But clearly that was a lie. Then I started noticing the money drain. I confronted her about the missing funds, and her reaction was explosive. She told me I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her, that I was just insecure because she was busy with her career. But the truth was, she'd been secretly funneling money into a separate account 150, supposedly for some startup she was helping Rick with. I found bank statements, hidden transfers, and it all clicked into place. She'd been lying to me from the start. That wasn't just an affair. She was scheming to leave me with nothing, and she had the nerve to act like I was the one manipulating her when I was just trying to keep my family afloat. What hit me hardest was realizing she'd been planning this for months. While I was out working, trying to make ends meet and fix up our house, she was secretly working with Rick, draining our savings and dreaming of a new life with him. It felt like a punch to the gut every time I thought about it. I was furious, betrayed, and deeply hurt. I couldn't believe I married someone who was capable of such lies. All the trust I'd placed in her just evaporated in an instant. I felt like a fool for not seeing the signs earlier, for not noticing how cold she'd become, how she'd lie straight to my face about everything. The worst part was the sense of betrayal that came with discovering she'd been secretly planning to take everything I worked for, everything we built together, and run off with Rick. I felt humiliated, angry, and exhausted. I knew I had to confront her again, this time not just about the affair, but about the money, the lies, and her intentions. But I also knew that revealing everything might destroy what little was left of our marriage. Still, I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I had to face her, and I had to decide what to do about the mess she'd created. The confrontation didn't happen right away. I needed time to process everything, every lie, every betrayal, every dollar she'd secretly siphoned off. But eventually, I couldn't keep silent. One evening, I sat her down in what used to be our living room, now just of unspoken tension. She was dressed in that bitchy, dismissive way she always did when she knew she was caught. Her eyes flicked away when I looked at her, directly, like she was trying to hide something even then. I laid out the evidence I'd gathered, the emails, the bank statements, the transfers. I watched her face twist into a mask of feigned innocence. She rolled her eyes and scoffed. "You're crazy. You always jump to conclusions. I don't know what you're talking about." But I kept pressing, showing her the proof I had, the proof I knew she couldn't deny. Her reaction was textbook, defensive, dismissive, full of lies. She told me it was all a misunderstanding, that she was just helping Rick with a startup idea, that the money was a loan, that she never cheated on me. I couldn't believe her words. She was lying so blatantly I started to wonder if she even believed her own lies. She said she'd never slept with Rick, that she was just flirting to keep her job interesting, that Rick was harmless. But I knew better. I had seen the messages, read her words. She'd been planning this for months, and now she was trying to gaslight me into doubting what I knew was true. The anger boiled over. I told her I didn't want to hear her lies anymore. I demanded she tell me the truth, plain and simple. Her reaction was to get defensive, accuse me of manipulating her, of controlling her, of not trusting her. She said I was paranoid, that I was turning into some jealous, insecure husband, and that I was ruining everything. She tried to make me feel guilty, like I was the one breaking our marriage apart. But I wasn't stupid. I knew she'd been planning her escape, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I told her I was done with her lies, that I wanted a divorce, that I wanted her out of my life. The emotional fallout hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd loved her once, or at least I thought I did. Now I just felt numb. The betrayal cut so deep it was hard to breathe. I kept replaying everything, her sneaking around, her lies, her manipulations. I was furious at myself for not noticing sooner, for trusting her so blindly. I felt a mix of sadness and rage. How could she do this to me? To us, it felt like my entire world was collapsing, and I was helpless to stop it. But I also knew I couldn't keep living in this chaos. I had to make a decision. I couldn't let her drain me dry financially, emotionally, or otherwise. I started thinking about how to protect what was left of my assets, how to get her out of the house, how to make sure she didn't take everything. I realized I had to be strategic, because she was already planning her next move, probably to take me to court or claim she was manipulated. I had to fight for what was mine, for my sanity, and for whatever shred of dignity I had left. That night I stayed up until dawn, going over everything, trying to come up with a plan. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. She lied from the beginning, and now I saw her true colors. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about her complete disregard for me, for our life together, and for the honesty we once shared. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. The betrayal was almost unbearable, but I knew I had to stand my ground. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I was done being the victim in this twisted game she'd been playing. After that night, everything felt different. I was numb but also determined. I started making moves, consulting a lawyer, gathering more evidence, and trying to figure out my next steps. I knew she was planning something, probably to drain more money or to manipulate the legal system to get half of everything. That's when I discovered she'd been secretly draining our account for months, funneling money into her own account under the guise of helping Rick with his startup. I found hidden transfers, and it was clear she'd been lying about everything. About the startup, about her supposed help, about her innocent flirtations. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was furious. She had taken our savings, our future, and was planning to walk away with it all. I started to realize the extent of her manipulation. She had lied so much, gaslighted me into questioning my own judgment. She kept insisting she loved me, that I was paranoid, that she'd never cheat. But her actions told a different story. I felt like I'd been played for a fool, and now I had to fight back. I couldn't let her get away with it, not without a fight. So I decided to confront her again, but this time I was prepared. I laid everything out on the table, proof of her affair, proof of the money she'd stolen, her plans to leave me with nothing. Her reaction was predictable. She accused me of being controlling, said I was just jealous and insecure. She called me all sorts of names, tried to turn things around on me, saying I'd manipulated her into this mess. But I didn't buy it. I told her she was a liar and a thief, that I was done playing her game. I told her she was not taking a single cent more of my money, and if she tried, I'd take legal action. That's when she snapped. She started crying, claiming she loved me, that she was just trying to help Rick because he was her boss and she believed in his startup. She said she never intended to hurt me, that she was just stressed and confused. But I saw through her bullshit. She was just trying to cover her tracks, to make me feel guilty so I wouldn't fight back. And that's exactly what she did. She played the victim as if she was The one wronged, not the other way around. The most shocking part was realizing she'd been planning her escape for months. She'd been secretly saving money, draining accounts, talking to lawyers, and probably lining up her new life with Rick. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. All the years we shared, the vows, the plans for our future, all of it was crumbling before my eyes. I was devastated, but also more determined than ever. I knew I had to protect what was mine, to cut her out of my life if I had to. I started making arrangements to secure my assets, to keep her from taking everything in court. I hired a private investigator to get more proof of her scheming. I also reached out to a divorce lawyer, knowing this wasn't going to be simple. She had her lies, her manipulations, her legal threats. She was trying to play the victim, but I could see through it now. I knew she was just trying to cover her tracks, to save herself from the fallout of her betrayal. I couldn't let her do that. I had to be smart, ruthless even if I wanted to come out of this with some dignity intact. That was the point I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. Not as my wife, not as a person. Her actions proved she cared about herself more than she ever cared about me. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted, but also strangely relieved. I finally saw her for who she truly was. Now, I just had to hold on, fight for what's mine, and figure out how to move forward from this nightmare. It was clear she was planning to leave me with nothing. Her words, her actions, her entire demeanor confirmed it. But I wasn't going to let her win. Not without a fight. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, financial audits, and endless sleepless nights. I threw myself into protecting what was left of my life, my house, my savings, my sanity. I was determined not to let her take everything, especially after discovering how deep her betrayal went. I found out she had been secretly talking to lawyers, planning her escape with Rick's help. She'd even started looking into how to get full custody of our dog and how to claim half the house. It was like she was already moving on, as if I was just some obstacle she needed to get around to get her new life. I hired a private investigator to follow her around, just to see if she was doing anything else sneaky. Turns out, she'd been meeting Rick at a hotel downtown, and she was planning to leave town with him once she got her legal footing. I saw the photos, her sneaking out late at night, looking over her shoulder, clutching a bag. It was a punch to the gut every time I saw those images. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't deny the truth anymore. She was already planning her escape, and she didn't care what she'd have to do to get there. Meanwhile, I kept digging into her financials. I found more transfers, secret accounts, investments I never knew about, and even a trust fund she'd set up for herself. She was preparing for a life without me, one where she'd be free to do whatever she wanted, with Rick by her side. That's when I realized she'd been manipulating me from the very beginning. She played the innocent wife, the hard-working professional, but behind that mask was a cold, calculating woman who was willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get what she wanted. I knew I had to act fast. I went to my lawyer and explained everything, showing him the evidence. We drafted a detailed legal plan, filing for divorce, freezing her accounts, and making sure she couldn't take a dime of our shared assets. She was trying to spin it, claiming I was abusive and manipulative, but I had the proof. I had her texts, her emails, the bank statements. I wasn't going to let her twist this into some kind of victim story. I was the victim here, and I was going to fight for my rights. One night, I confronted her again. She was packing her bags, trying to look innocent, pretending she was just leaving for a business trip. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her I knew everything. The affair, the money, the lies. I told her I was done being manipulated and that she wasn't going anywhere until we sorted this out legally. Her face twisted into a mixture of anger and panic. She yelled, called me crazy, said I was ruining her life. But I stood my ground. I told her I was taking control of the situation and she could either cooperate or face the consequences. That moment marked a turning point. I saw her real face, selfish, manipulative, and utterly ruthless. I felt a strange mixture of relief and disgust. Relief because I finally saw the truth, and disgust because I had trusted her for so long. I realized I'd been living in a fantasy, believing she was the woman I loved. But she was just a liar and a thief, and now I had to clean up the mess she'd made. I knew the legal battle wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to fight for what was mine, my house, my money, my dignity. I refused to be another victim of her schemes. As I sat there watching her leave, I couldn't help but feel a deep sadness mixed with a fierce determination. This wasn't just about losing her. It was about reclaiming myself. I had to rebuild, had to find a way to move forward from the betrayal. I promised myself I'd never trust someone blindly again, and I'd do everything I could to make sure she didn't walk away with a single thing I had worked so hard for. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew I couldn't let her win, not like this. The legal process dragged on longer than I expected, but every day I felt more certain about my decision. I had all the evidence, her secret transfers, the hotel meetings with Rick, the emails where she shamelessly flirted and plotted her escape. My lawyer was relentless, filing motions to freeze her accounts, prevent her from selling or transferring the house, and protect my assets. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep my head straight, dealing with the emotional fallout of betrayal. Some days I was furious, others just numb. But I kept pushing forward, knowing I had to be strong for myself. One of the biggest shocks came when I discovered she'd been secretly planning to sue me for half the property, claiming I manipulated her into signing papers and that I'd been controlling her all along. She even hired a lawyer to pursue the claim, trying to turn the tables on me. I couldn't believe her audacity. After everything she'd done, she was now trying to make me look like the bad guy. It was classic. Her lie, manipulate, then accuse me of the same. I had to gather even more proof, compile a timeline, and prepare for a battle I knew would get ugly. Throughout all this, I kept asking myself how I missed the signs. How did I not see her sneaking around, draining our savings and plotting to leave me? I kept replaying moments in my head. Her sudden coldness, her dismissive attitude, the late-night phone calls. It all added up now. She'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. I realized she'd been living a double life, pretending to be the perfect wife while secretly building her escape route. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was suffocating, but I had to hold it together. I couldn't let her see me fall apart, not now. One evening, I sat in the house alone, staring at the empty spaces where she used to be. I felt a mixture of relief and emptiness. It was over, or at least close to it. I knew I'd win the legal battle, but I also knew I'd never get back the years we shared. I'd lost trust, love, and a part of myself. Still, I told myself this was the end of the nightmare. I had to rebuild my life from the ground up. I started making plans, how to sell the house, how to protect my assets, how to move on. I knew she had no intention of coming back. She was already with Rick, probably planning their new life together, leaving me behind with the wreckage. The worst part was the feeling of betrayal, knowing she'd been secretly planning her departure while pretending everything was fine. She'd lied to my face, manipulated every situation, and now she was trying to pin it all on me. I couldn't let her get away with that. I was determined to see this through, to come out of it with what's rightfully mine and my dignity intact. I didn't expect to feel so broken, but I also knew I'd survive. I had to. For the first time in a long while, I understood that trusting blindly was a mistake, and from now on I'd keep my guard up. I'd learned the hard way that some people are just good at pretending until they're not. And when they reveal their true colors, you have to be ready to fight for what's yours. The final court date came sooner than I expected, but honestly I was ready. All the evidence was on my side. The bank statements, her secret transfers, the emails, even the photos of her meeting Rick at that hotel. I sat there in the courtroom, watching her lawyer try to spin her lies, but I knew the truth was staring everyone in the face. My lawyer presented everything meticulously, showing how she'd manipulated the finances and planned her escape under the guise of helping Rick's startup. It was clear she'd been deceitful from the start. Her entire story was a web of lies she'd spun to cover her tracks. When the judge finally ruled, it was a relief. The court awarded me full ownership of the house, froze her assets and her claim for half the property. She looked stunned, her bitchy cracking just a little. She tried protesting, claiming I manipulated her into signing papers, but it was all empty noise. The evidence was irrefutable. I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. Vindication because I finally won what was mine. sadness because I knew I'd lost the person I'd once loved, the person I thought I knew. After the ruling, I packed up what was left of my things. I moved out of the house, leaving her behind to deal with the fallout. She was furious, screaming at me in court, calling me every name in the book. She even tried to threaten me with a countersuit, claiming I manipulated her emotionally. But I knew better. I had all the proof, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I walked away from it all feeling exhausted but finally free. The nightmare was over, and I was finally able to breathe again. Looking back, I realize I learned some hard lessons. Trust isn't something you give blindly. People can pretend to be something they're not for a long time, and sometimes betrayal comes from those closest to you. I also learned that money reveals a lot about a person's true character. Her secret draining of our joint account, her lies about the startup, her scheming, all of it showed me who she really was. It's crazy how someone you love can turn into a stranger so quickly. I won't lie, this experience changed me. It made me more cautious, more guarded, but it also taught me resilience. I started rebuilding my life from scratch, focusing on myself, and learning how to trust again, but more carefully this time. I've cut out the toxic people, and I've learned that sometimes the best revenge is just moving on and finding happiness without someone who only brought pain. To anyone going through something similar, I'd say, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags. And if you find yourself betrayed, don't be afraid to fight for what's rightfully yours. You deserve honesty, respect, and loyalty, none of which I got from her. But I also learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a chance to start over. It's not easy and it hurts like hell, but eventually you'll find your way back. And when you do, you'll see that the strength to survive was always inside you. You just had to dig deep enough to find it.